Hello. Yeah. That's wake-up call for those inside and a call for those outside. We're about to start. For the sake of time and respect to our presenter, so let me introduce you, Amanda Hill from FSHD Society. She's the Senior Director of Research and Care. She has a background in biomedical research, a certified one, by the way, right? And she seems to be passionate about driving progress for the FSHD community. That is something that we can all tell about you and the excellent work that you are performing. So thank you very much for being here, and we're willing to learn as usual when you are presenting something. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Ricardo. I'm really honored to be here today. Thank you to the organizers for having me. And I'm going to be sharing about a global collaboration to accelerate clinical trials and access to future therapies in FSHD. And this is something I have been truly honored and humbled to be a part of, this collaboration, working alongside many of you in this room. And so we're very excited to share about this. So my name is Amanda Hill. I work on research at the FSHD Society. And I know I don't have the privilege of having met many of you in this room. I have come from very far away on the other side of the pond. I live in Denver, Colorado in the US, which is right smack in the middle of the country there. And Denver is a really beautiful city, nestled at the base of the Rocky Mountains. And you can see a picture here. Every day, I never tire of looking at our gorgeous mountains. So I invite you all to Denver. It's a beautiful place. Please come visit. And one of the most important reasons I am standing here in front of you all today, and the reason that I do what I do for work every day, is this man on the screen here. This is my partner, Justin. He was diagnosed with FSHD about 9 years ago now. It's not in his family, as far as we know. So the process of getting that diagnosis took several years. As many of you are familiar with, there was a lot of seeing different specialists and doctors and struggling to understand what was going on with his body. And receiving that diagnosis threw our lives into a little bit of chaos of uncertainty and fear about what were we headed for with the rest of our lives. So I don't have to tell you all, we are all familiar about the urgency that we live with FSHD. Urgency for treatments and for a cure, because every day is a day that we are losing muscle. FSHD comes with unpredictable, relentless progression, and it affects our muscles, it gives pain and fatigue, and it does so much more than just affecting muscles, it affects our whole bodies and our whole lives. It takes an emotional and psychological toll and a social toll as well. And there are no approved treatments yet, but as we have seen today, there is hope, and a lot of hope on the horizon. However, even though there are multiple therapies being developed in clinical trials, just because a therapy is successful in a trial and receives regulatory approval does not automatically mean that patients everywhere are going to be able to access that drug through their clinics. So there are still 3 key problems that we have to solve and tackle in order to make sure that all of us in this room can access those drugs. The first problem is around slow clinical trials. So sometimes clinical trials sites struggle to get moving and get started enrolling fast enough, and this causes delays in the overall time that it takes to run clinical trials. And although this hasn't been a problem yet in FSHD, something that could happen, and that has happened in other disease areas, is that clinical trial sites can sometimes struggle to find enough participants to enroll in the studies. And when these things happen, the companies that are developing these drugs could see that the cost of developing them has become very high, and the risks of doing that development has become very high, and they could decide to stop developing drugs. And this is something we want to prevent from ever happening in FSHD. Another problem that we need to tackle is the problem of delayed patient access. So as I said, once a drug receives a regulatory approval, patients don't necessarily get access to that in their countries, and that is because countries need time to set up their healthcare coverage and reimbursement systems after a drug receives regulatory approval. And doctors and clinical sites need time to prepare to administer that drug. These things can take months, even years in some countries. So we want to make sure that we can pave the way for that to happen very smoothly and as fast as possible. And the final problem that we need to tackle is that there is no unified global plan to tackle these problems. It doesn't really exist out there. And we risk, if we're all working on these problems separately and not communicating, we risk duplicating efforts and slowing ourselves down overall. And that's not something we want to do in FSHD because there aren't very many of us, our resources are scarce, and we can't afford to lose any time. So with these problems in mind, we have created this global collaboration called Project Mercury to solve and tackle all of those challenges. So the mission of Project Mercury is to solve the challenges that slow or stop the development and delivery of therapies to people living with FSHD all over the world. And this is a global project in scope, and it is led and managed by patient advocacy organizations globally. And this has been built very much on the foundation of the World FSHD Alliance. And many of the organizations in this room, probably all of them, I think, are part of the World FSHD Alliance. There are over 30 different patient advocacy groups represented there. So Project Mercury is really building on that foundation to tackle these very specific problems. And this project has been designed to break barriers and to move quickly at speed. And this has been inspired by a successful model that has been employed in Duchenne muscular dystrophy called Project Hercules. So what are we trying to do exactly? Project Mercury has 3 different work streams, and under those 3 work streams, we have 4 key goals that we are trying to achieve. So the first work stream is clinical trial readiness. And the first goal that we have there is to grow the global cohort of trial-ready FSHD patients. And to do this, we aim to have over 10,000 patients in the registries locally in their country who are providing data through their registry, who are engaged with their local organization, participating in events and supporting the community there, and who are knowledgeable and understand clinical trials and willing and able to participate. The second goal under that first work stream is to expand and optimize the global clinical trial infrastructure. So this is where we want to help trials move faster by having more clinical trial sites available and helping those sites operate more efficiently with the resources that they have so that they can move very quickly. The second work stream that Project Mercury is tackling is called patient access. And our goal here is to remove the barriers that slow or delay patient access to those approved therapies. And this is something that we can tackle a couple ways. The first is by generating evidence and models that are used by healthcare systems to make their decisions about coverage of a drug and reimbursement of a drug. We can start doing some of that work now and laying the groundwork for them so it's done when the time comes for them to start make their decisions. And the second way we can impact here is simply through our voice and our advocacy and being very loud and clear to our policymakers about what's important to us and why. And then the third work stream for Project Mercury is sustainability, and the goal is to establish sustainable operations and resources. So this is where we need to work to find funding to do the projects. This is where we need to build partnerships globally that will be lasting and have a lasting impact, and where we also want to create the tools to continue the work long term. So Project Mercury is a project. It is a short-term time frame. It's a few years long that we're going to be doing this work, but we aim to have toolkits and resources produced at the end of that so that all the countries in the World Alliance can continue doing that work locally in their country. Okay, so a little practically, so Project Mercury acts at 2 levels. We act both at the global level and at the country local level. So at the global level, there is a group called the Global Task Force. This group contains all of the patient advocacy organization leaders in Project Mercury. It contains clinicians, experts on data, and biopharma representatives from the sponsors that are developing drugs. And at the global level, this group is creating the overarching strategy for the project, and they're also helping to create some of the tools and the resources and find the funding to do the work. And then the other piece of Project Mercury happens at the local level with what we call country working groups. And these are the country working groups are made up of the local patient advocacy representatives, the local patient community, clinicians in that country, and folks with regulator or payer experts, again, within that country specifically. And those teams are working together to focus on what do we need to do in our specific country, in our specific context, to achieve all of those goals. And importantly, the country working groups and the global task force, we meet together and we are talking and sharing resources all the time so that we're coordinating both in country and globally across all countries. And in this way, we can work together smarter and hopefully faster. Okay, so why does this matter for all of you in the room? If we are successful with Project Mercury, we hope that you will all have easier access to clinical trials. Hopefully there will be more clinical trial sites, we'll have better information, better education, so that all of you are able to access trials. We also hope that you will all have faster access to approved therapies once we are there. And in addition to that, you will be able to help influence what comes next for the FSHD community. When you share your experience and your voice locally through your local patient advocacy organization, that flows into Project Mercury, and it helps shape how FSHD is understood by doctors, by companies, and by payers and healthcare systems. So I just want to take a few minutes and share a little bit of what we're really working on and some of the progress that we've made so far. So at the global level, the Global Task Force, one of the things that we are doing, and this has been quite a labor of love, is that we are working, again, globally to update and align the data that is collected by registries all over the world. And we are working with groups, with Treat NMD, with different universities all over the world that have registries to do this. And this is so important because we want registries to ask the same questions of their patients and collect the data in the same format so that we can combine that data globally. And that allows us to learn more about FSHD faster. And once there are treatments on the market, it's going to allow us to better understand the real impact of those treatments in the real world faster. So we need to be able to combine and align that data. Another thing that has happened is that we have launched something called the Global FSHD Innovation Hub. And this is an organization that can work directly with sponsors who are running clinical trials to help them run their trials more effectively in FSHD. And so the hub brings together experts in running clinical trials in FSHD to do that work. And then the final thing that one of the other projects that the Global Task Force is working on is to build models for health technology assessment decision-making. And this is that process that I've been talking about. After a drug receives regulatory approval, the policymakers in a country have to go through a very structured process to understand not only does the drug work and is it safe, that was what the clinical trial did, but now how cost effective is the drug going to be within the context of the healthcare system, and what will the impact of bringing that drug and covering that drug actually be on the healthcare system. And there are economic models and ways to model the disease that need to be built in order to make those decisions. And so we are working very actively to do that within Project Mercury, because we want the FSHD community to be the one saying, this is the model you should use. This represents the patient community and the patient voice. We don't want those HTA bodies to be doing that on their own and making their own models. Okay, and then at the local level, I'm almost at time, I'm almost done. Just a few quick highlights. There have been, and this is just a few things, there's so much more happening, but over the last year or so, there have been new registries launched in Spain, in Italy, in Australia, and the US. Some of the first CTRN, Clinical Trial Research Network sites outside of Europe and North America have been launched in Australia, in Brazil, and also in Hong Kong, which is very exciting. There is a study that's planned here in the Netherlands to help understand why people do not participate in registries and clinical trials, so that we can better understand more perspectives and reach more people, and have them pulled into the research world. And of course, there are patient days and events planned globally, including the Europe Connect that we're all at today, which is a huge milestone for the European community. So very practically, how you can get involved. The first is connect with your local patient advocacy organization, sign up for your local registry, respond to their surveys, provide your data, and tell others to do the same. Also, we heard just a wonderful talk earlier about what it's like to participate in clinical trials. Please talk to your clinician about that, but also other research opportunities. If you're not eligible or not interested in a trial, there are a lot of ways you can still help move the needle forward. And then finally, participate in local events and advocacy events when you have the opportunity. So that is what Project Mercury is. Really, it's about accelerating hope, and it's about patients and families leading the way, working across borders to speed therapies and the delivery of new treatments. And we're closer than ever to having new treatments for FSHD, and we want to make sure that no one is left behind. Thank you.